This episode is brought to you by Anchor.fm. If you haven't heard of Anchor, you should definitely check them out. It's a super easy tool that anyone can use to create and distribute their podcast. It has everything you need, and you can do it all from your computer or even your phone. Need your podcast cover art? There's a tool. Music and sound effects? They have you covered. Want to record on the fly? It's easy with the app. Now you may be saying to yourself, I already have a podcast. No worries, just create your account, upload, and publish to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Looking for some walking around money? Anchor connects you with advertisers who match your brand. It's a one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
You're listening to BizQuik. This is where Julie and Corey provide quick and useful information to small business owners. BizQuik is the podcast where small business owners get to showcase their businesses and receive expert advice and guidance in areas many entrepreneurs struggle with. And you, the listener, get solutions, tips, and tricks on real-world topics that many small business owners face. Julie and Corey are the experts small businesses hire when they need solutions. And the BizQuik podcast is just one way they deliver those solutions. Let's start the show.
Welcome to BizQuik. I'm Corey.
And I'm Julie.
And today we have Devin Miller on the podcast. He's the CEO and founder of Miller IP Law. He is an entrepreneur, has a couple of companies, and he is based out of the Salt Lake City area.
He is. I'm looking forward to talking to him. I have a very big interest in when people need to apply for a patent or for a trademark. I don't really know a lot about the area, so I'll be interested in that.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because I've always wanted to say I've patented something. Just like I always said I wanted to write a book, and that process was terrible.
Yeah, and Devin is a pretty big entrepreneur. So I think if I remember correctly from a previous conversation that we had with him, I think he said that he started a business when he was getting his MBA as a result of a competition. Yeah,
he like a lot of MBAs, they have these business idea competitions, whatever. You get, assigned to a group, come up with an idea. Ours, we had to do we're already in a group, and we just had to come up with like the business idea, and it was more about the process and not really the actual idea, which was great because I did not like our idea.
What was your idea?
It was some sort of home meal replacement thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was terrible. But
it sounds terrible.
Yeah, but they were more interested in like us writing a business plan and having like solid financials and all of that, and like projections, etc. So
yeah, that's kind of key to starting a business. But I don't know it, and maybe it's just me, and I'm being like, I'll use the word snobbish, though I don't think I'm snobbish, but one of my biggest pet peeves is when I see people post on social media that they want to start a business and they need ideas on what business to start. And I'm like, if you don't know what you want to do, you probably shouldn't start one.
Yes, I agree. And it's funny because, by the end of that semester, year, whatever, however long it took, we had a viable business that could potentially make money, and nobody did anything with it because there was no passion in the product. It was like, we were like, all right, we're just doing this to get a grade, done. We're all going to go back to our jobs.
Yeah. I think that passion is important when you are starting a business because maybe people don't realize how much time you spend in the business when you first start, right? I mean, if we hated helping small businesses, or we hated this, thing we're building, how quickly would we have quit?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And the passion doesn't necessarily need to be I love helping small businesses, or, home meal replacement things, whatever it is. If you just want to be your own boss and that's your passion, that's fine. Just pick something that's a little more turnkey, like
Get a Subway franchise?
Do not open a restaurant unless you are passionate about restaurants.
Or maybe like an Orange Theory Fitness or an F45
there
or something.
Go. Yeah,
okay.
Because I'm just gonna say that's one industry you don't want to just I'm just gonna dabble in restaurants. It sucks.
But for the record, we do love small businesses.
We do.
That's not just a show and go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if we're going to be talking to Devin, and he is an IP attorney, I just have to ask, what do you think is the best invention ever made?
I don't know if I can answer that question. It's like asking who the best band is
Of all time, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
No, absolutely not.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
But that's because, I mean, in my opinion, people are like, oh, it's the Beatles or, you know, whatever. But like the Beatles aren't that good. They were influential. A lot of bands were built upon the stuff that the Beatles did.
Well, the Beatles stole a lot of what they did from like Elvis and some early like rockabilly people.
And so that's the whole thing, is that like it's all kind of built upon each other. So, you know, I had this one conversation I had with a friend of mine who's a musician. His answer to that is like, it's some band who you've never heard of that only ever played in their garage. That's the best band on the planet.
Nirvana.
But yeah.
I don't know. So I think, you know, like there are some really great inventions that if you think just like, what would our world be like without them? Like, okay, so here's a good example. I'm not saying that the microwave is the best invention ever, but I'm going to say this. So I don't have a microwave, right? I don't. And I think pretty much every day I'm like, damn, I wish I had a microwave. It would make this much faster. So it just kind of slows down all the processes around like meals for me because I don't have one. So it's not an option and I miss it. But I also know I could easily live without it. I mean, I've gone a year without one and
sure,
I've not crumbled.
I use my microwave at least once a day.
Yes.
But the funny story about the microwave, do you know how it was invented? Or I'm not even saying invented, discovered.
No, I don't.
And it's amazing how many things have been discovered by poor science practices. Like a handful of sweeteners were found, like artificial sweeteners were found because the scientist was in the lab, spilled this chemical on their hand, and then later like licked their finger. And it was like, oh, this is sweet. You didn't wash your hands? Come on.
That's scary.
Yeah, but the microwave was... they found out from radars, and when they invented radars in World War II. But basically, this guy was standing in front of a microwave, an unshielded microwave, and the chocolate bar in his pocket melted. He probably got sterilized as well.
That's fantastic. I had no idea. So just, you know, like, that's funny. So some great inventions. I mean, obviously there's the automobile and the wheel and whatnot, but we're some more that are a little bit more unconventional that people wouldn't think of as being really good inventions.
I mean, I really don't know. I love all the inventions that we get because of our desire to kill each other. You know, it's like the radar was invented because we were trying to protect ourselves from the Germans. And now we have microwaves. You know, nuclear energy was created because we were trying to kill the Germans.
We really had some problems with the Germans.
Well,
war is profitable. I say that all the time.
But yeah, I mean, like, I think that, you know, I'm going to say nuclear energy because it is clean. It's efficient. It's very, I will say, renewable in a sense. Especially when you get into like nuclear fusion, which they're working on now, which is another crazy thing that I'm concerned about because fusion is the sun's energy and they're creating it on Earth right now. And they're using magnets to control it. I have no idea what the science is behind it, but
how big are those magnets?
I don't know. I'm just like the magnets. You're controlling the sun with magnets.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to burn ourselves up one day.
A lot of people would argue we're going in that direction, and it may not be a bad thing with the way things are going right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, I don't know where I would land on it. There's a lot of really good inventions, and after that big brain response from you, I'm not sure I could say anything that wouldn't make me sound like a complete dolt.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna pass on my answer.
Disagree.
And let's yes, you are correct. And let's bring Devin in. He's been sitting in the waiting room for a while, and he's probably getting tired of listening to us talk about inventions and not talking with him.
Yes. We will take a quick break and be back with Devin. Hey everyone, we wanted to tell you about our latest course, Foundation 52, that will be available on February 15th. This course is built to provide tools and techniques every week of the year and is designed to improve your small business. If you're thinking about starting a business, this is a great resource for you as well. We walk you through sales, customer service, disaster planning, growth strategies, and so much more. Head on over to SB Pace to sign up today. All right, and welcome back. We've got Devin Miller with us. He is the CEO and founder of Miller IP Law. Welcome, Devin.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be here.
We're happy to have you.
Yeah.
So you are an entrepreneur at heart.
I am. So I probably always had an entrepreneur bent. I really first real foray into it, other than, a few odds and ends when I was a kid, was when I was in MBA school, entered a business competition, started it with a few people I didn't know, had a good enough idea that I bought the partners out, continued to build the investors on and bring people on. And then I've grown that now to be a 7 or an 8-figure business, coming up on a 9-figure business. So that one's, love being an entrepreneur, love to do it myself. And then with Miller IP Law, I take that same love and love to work with startups and small businesses to help them with patents and trademarks and copyrights and other things.
So my first question is this, and it's not so much business related as it is time related. If you've got this, 8 going on 9-figure business, and you've got your Miller IP Law, I know you're married and you've got 4 kids. How exactly do you have time for everything you're doing?
It's always a balance, and sometimes in life I do better jobs of balancing it all, and other times balance gets a bit out of whack. But so on the startup, there's a lot of a team there. So I'm not the only one there, and I've taken not a step back because I'm still actively involved, but I'm not the main driver or on the person that does the day to day. A lot of that's turned over to another or some other people that are good with the different aspects of it. So I think one is to build a good team around it. And then 2 is I kind of found that, as I have a lot of interests and a lot of endeavors that, kind of for a period of time, I was always working around the clock and, never getting everything done. So I kind of came to the conclusion that there's always more fires to put out with the business than there's time to put out the fires. So each day I wake up, get to work, put out as many fires, get as much as I can done. And then I put it aside, and then I'll come back the next day and do the same thing. And so I had to kind of just say, I'm going to spend time with the family. I'm going to spend time with my wife and kids and other things that are unbusiness related. When I'm at business, I'm going to work as hard as I can, as quick as I can, to do as much as I can, and then I'm going to go home and do the same thing with family and with my wife.
Yeah, I think I don't believe there's such a thing as balance when you're an entrepreneur. I think you put your focus and energy where it's needed at the time. But it sounds like you made a really good transition with that business of moving from working in to working on, that freed you up to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, and I want to ask Devin, if you don't mind, what the business is, because when I was in my MBA, we all had to, in our groups, do that, build a business type thing, and all of our ideas sucked.
Yeah, so getting into it a bit deeper, so I'll give you a little bit longer version of the story. So at the time, so I did a law degree as well as an MBA degree at the same time. So I was kind of studying those at the same time. I was also doing about 20 hours as a law clerk at a law firm. We'd had our first kid that was about 2 years old, and we just had our second kid. So I had plenty on my plate, but I can't remember now that when I've thought about it, and I can never quite remember. It was either I saw a flyer or I got an email, and I can't remember which. That was basically, hey, there's a business competition and it's multidisciplinary. So they got an engineer, they got a designer. I can't remember the other person. I think it was a couple different types of engineers. And then I was kind of on both the legal and the MBA, but it was kind of one of those competitions where you had everybody get together. You'd all go to the presentation. They tell you about the competition. You'd find groups of people that most of us, we never didn't know each other. So you just kind of randomly select who's in your group. So the first year we came up an idea to make gym bags less smelly, and entered in the competition. I think we took second. Wasn't that amazing of an idea, so we all kind of just said, okay, that was fun, and then we went about our ways. We came back the next year and said, oh, it'd be fun to kind of do the same competition. They're doing it again the second year, so group got back together, and we were coming up with some crazy ideas, everything from self-packaging boxes to other things, none of which really would have worked or gone anywhere. And I remember kind of as I was after a brainstorming session coming home, and I just ran some marathons. I've been into running, and I'm still pretty active in running, but had the idea of, wouldn't it be cool if you can monitor your hydration level as you're running? So that way you could tell if you're getting dehydrated. You could better make sure you're hydrated at the beginning of a sporting event or running and that. So that was kind of the genesis. And taking you back, this was in the years before Apple or iWatch or anything of the Fitbit. None of those had come out yet, so it's pretty early on. So kind of came up with that idea, mocked it up. I went home with over Christmas break. My dad's an electrical engineer as well. We came up with a general prototype that we kind of got to work. I tested it out, and we went from there. And then after the end of the competition, we were all seniors. We were graduating, going different places throughout the U.S. And so I said, I'm going to buy out my business partners, and I think it's a good enough idea to continue on. So it was really one of those where I just was kind of walking home, kind of brainstorming, and that was the one that hit me, and it then built in. It's actually now evolved from a hydration monitoring to more of a non-invasive glucose monitoring. So wearable to do our glucose monitoring for diabetes. A lot of this technology that we came up with originally does very well in that application. So there's a slightly longer version of the story.
No, that's great. And I mean, interesting for sure. Did the company, that business, that technology, is it safe to say that that's why you also got into IP law?
No, I mean, I was already going down the IP law route. And interestingly enough, I was doing a law clerk. So I kind of got to the end of undergraduate, and I did dual degree in engineering, electrical engineering, as well as Chinese. And at the end of that, I didn't know exactly what did I want to be. I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I liked engineering, but I didn't want to be stuck on a project for months or years at a time, be a small cog in a big wheel. Typically, you have to work, 10, 20 years to get high enough up to ever have an influence on engineering projects. So I don't want to do that. So it was kind of with the idea of, I like engineering, but I didn't want to be an engineer. What do I want to do? And so I had two competing interests. One was I tended to like the legal aspect. I had an uncle that was an intellectual property attorney, kind of seeing what he had done. So I had interest there. Also had entrepreneur interest. So that's kind of when I went off to graduate school. I decided to get both the law degree for intellectual property as well as do an MBA kind of on the entrepreneur side. So it was already kind of fairly well in mind, and I was just already chasing down both of those routes, and then they just kind of fit well together.
You are a little bit of an overachiever. That is very clear.
Yes.
I'm sitting here thinking about all the things that I've done or that Corey's done. And honestly, it's kind of shameful when you put it up against what you're doing.
I will say that it only took me one semester of college to find out that I didn't want to be an engineer.
Hey, you outpaced me. It took me almost 5 years to figure that out. So
what?
No, but I use engineering all the time. I love it. It's just I didn't want to be an engineer in the typical sense of that type of a job.
Yeah, it's always good to have a thinking process that when you can think like an engineer, it gives you a lot of advantages, especially in the business world. I am curious, though. I want to kind of pivot a little bit the conversation more towards your IP law, and I've always been really curious about, when do people know that they need a patent attorney, and what are your typical clients getting patents on?
When do people know? When they watch Shark Tank? No, I mean, there's a little bit of tongue in cheek, but I mean, there's a decent amount of people that don't know when they need intellectual property until either one, somebody else tells them, two, they see it on a TV show. Oh, well, they need one. I should probably look into that. Or three, that they have enough experience and background that they've done it. Either they've worked at companies or they've already been an inventor or other things on things that they kind of have experience in the background, of doing that. But generally it's kind of, one of, you'll get some people that wait way too long, that, they don't know that they need it, and then they wait too long, and they've either missed deadlines and can't get a patent, or they can't get a trademark, or they're having issues. And so sometimes we'll get people that didn't know they need it, waited way too long, and then they're trying to come in because they've got someone else that's sending them a cease and desist letter, or that they're getting in legal troubles, and then we're having to kind of go back after the fact. So now the question is when do they need it is a little bit different necessarily than when do they come to the realization they need it. So generally with, I'll hit on kind of the two big ones that are generally kind of patents and trademarks. So patents, there's kind of two gating features of how early can you get a patent, and when's a cutoff to get a patent, and then, usually kind of fit somewhere in between there. Earliest you can get a patent is what we would call conceptual reduction of practice. Basically what that means is, can you explain your invention? So let's say you come up with the world's best widget, the next iPhone, the next Uber, the next whatever you want to be, and you come up with a great invention. You say, okay, now I need to get that from an idea stage to where I can actually explain it to somebody in the industry. So I could go to somebody else in the industry and say, this is what my invention is. This is how it works. And they say, okay, I get that. I could recreate it or make that if I put some time and effort into it, but I get how it works. So that's kind of the earliest. If you haven't reached that stage, you're too early. You can still talk with an attorney, get kind of a strategy and a roadmap, but you wouldn't get started on a patent. On the other side is with the patent is, anytime you put it out in the public, you have 1 year from which you can actually get a patent on it. So if you put it out on a website, you do a presentation, a trade show, you go start trying to sell it door to door, whatever it is, once you put it out in the public, you have a year time clock starting from the earliest date. So when you do that, you're going to look at saying, okay, you don't want to wait longer than a year after you put it out in the public. So earliest is when you can explain it to a level that people can understand it. Latest is if you put it out in the public, don't wait longer than a year. Generally, I say earlier on, at least go talk to an attorney earlier on so you can get a strategy as to when you're going to do it. There's a lot more that goes into it with if you're doing angel investors or venture capital, or if it's a competitive industry. So there's a lot more to that analysis that kind of gives you a bit of a gating feature. Then the other one is trademarks, and trademarks are more for brands. So patents are more for inventions, for widgets, for something that does something that has a functionality to it. Trademarks are all about brands. So if you think of Nike or Adidas or Apple or Starbucks or Pepsi or Coca-Cola, any of those, they're heavily into brands, right? A lot of the reason you buy those products is because they have a great brand. So when you're looking at brands, there isn't a cutoff. There isn't a specific date that you have to file it, as opposed to patents. It's generally more of when if your intention is to build a brand, the biggest thing is that you want to protect that earlier on, because if somebody else files a trademark before you, then they can create an issue where you're not able to get a trademark on it. They can largely stop you from using your brand, and then you're either having to rebrand, which can be very expensive. You're having to negotiate a deal with them so that you can both coexist or whatnot. So if your intent is to build a brand company, you're better to do that earlier on when you're starting to build the company.
How often do you have to deal with people stealing other people's ideas and brands and all that type of stuff? Because one of the things that I learned is that if you're trying to build something, whether it's a business or whatever, like, it's better to share your ideas, because people are going to genuinely want to try and help you, and fewer people are going to try and steal those ideas because they've already got their own, their things going on.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a bit industry specific and how competitive the industry is. I mean, this morning, and without getting into any client details, talking with a client even as recently as today, that they had somebody that's come along and they feel that they have copied their brand. And so the issue is if you take a brand as an example, let's say you spend, some of the big brands, they spend millions to billions of dollars on their brand, right? They spend a ton on advertising and marketing. What if all of a sudden you were Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Starbucks or M&Ms, and somebody just took your brand and started making their own products, stuck your name on it, then you would have a lot of the value in your business all of a sudden gets depreciated because everybody's simply are knocking off your brand. And so it a little bit depends on what your company is, where the value is, and where you're centering it. So a lot of times, if you built a big brand, you put a ton of time to building your reputation, you're going to want to protect it because that's where the value of your business is. And if somebody else just simply comes and knocks it off, you're not going to have any business left to do it. Now, the flip side is you can take, there's a lot of companies that do licensing. They do cross agreements. And so you take, huge company, Disney, Marvel, those type of things. A lot of the way they build their brand is by licensing out to stick Marvel on everything from pillows to blankets to, everything and across the board to kids' toys and everything else. They're not doing that all themselves, but they're built their brand and now they're licensing it out so they can kind of allow others to use their brand, but they make a compensation. So generally it kind of depends on your. On the other hand, let's say you build a brand, but you're really not focused on the brand. You make really good widgets and you don't care, as long as everybody buys them from you, you don't care what your brand is or who's putting their brand on it. Maybe you don't care as much, you don't focus on it. So it really depends on the value of your business and how much, if somebody else were to copy that, it would be an ouch type of a factor.
I heard a speech that Sarah Blakely gave a while back. She's the inventor of Spanx, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about patent, right? And when she got her patent for her product, and she said that now she has she regularly, people are trying to copy what she has created, and she does not go after them. Like, because she does not want to discourage entrepreneurs, and because she doesn't feel like anybody can recreate exactly what she's created. And she's also pretty much cornered the market, so she's in that space where she's like, we don't go after people who basically are trying to copy what we have patented. But I'm always curious about the fine line between, and maybe there is no intersection here, or there's nothing even close, but between getting a patent and what that means from a monopoly perspective, right? Because you have to be able to, other people have to be able to compete against you. So you want competition, but when you have a patent, what exactly does it protect you from?
Yeah, and I think Spanx is a good example because they do have patents, obviously. And, I worked with another company that's called Red Hat, and it's Linux. If you ever know anything about computers and open operating system, they have, literally thousands of patents, and yet they don't go out and actively enforce them. Now, if they ever have anybody come against them, they have a big war chest, and it's kind of mutually assured destruction type of thing that, hey, if you sue us, if you come after us, we have a big portfolio that we can, enforce against you, and we can, or certainly protect ourselves, but we're not going to actively do it. And there's kind of that balance, and I'll get to your question just a bit. Spanx, one thing that they have going for them is they built a big brand, right? So it'd be interesting, and I don't know their answer, if they weren't a big brand and they were now trying to compete in the marketplace where not everybody knew about their brand, not everybody knew about their product, would they take the same position? Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but it's certainly easier to, when you're a huge company, you're saying, yeah, we have all these small startups that are going, they're not going to erode into our into our business. We'd rather be a good actor, help them along the way, versus, hey, if you spent millions of dollars in R&D, you're just a small startup starting to get in the marketplace, starting to are going, and now you have someone that rips off your idea and starts to do it. It's two different kind of scenarios that you're looking at. Now, the question on monopoly, what can you do with a patent? And I think that was your question. Is a patent isn't necessarily a monopoly as much as what it allows you to do is stop others from making, selling, producing, or otherwise manufacturing what you have patented. So it's not that it grants you a monopoly. You can get a patent and not do well in business. You cannot, if you don't have a business around it, you don't have sales, you get a patent for something that nobody wants to buy, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Rather, it allows you to, if you put in a ton of time, money, and effort, R&D, research and development, and everything else, it allows you to capture it such that you get to decide, who gets to manufacture, who gets to produce it, or otherwise sell your product. If you want to let everybody do it and everybody is going, and you're fine with everybody competing, by all means, then you have that option. And also allows that option, if you have bad actors or people that are knocking you off or otherwise doing it, you can control who is going to be able to use your invention.
That makes complete sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we are running out of time. So, Devin, if you wouldn't mind, if you could let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you if they need patent help or something like that.
Sure. I'll give them a couple ways. So if they have questions, and one of the things we do is free strategy meetings where we sit down, answer your questions, kind of like this, only a little bit more tailored. So if you have, hey, what is a patent? How long does it last? Do I need one? What's the term, what is the qualifications for a patent? Any or all of the above. Same thing on trademarks. You can go to strategymeeting.com. You can grab some time, links right to my calendar, and grab some time and we can chat that way. So that's an easy way to answer some questions. If you want to just get started, you want to learn more about our pricing, kind of what we're about, what kind of services we provide, you can just go to lawwithmiller.com, and that one's an easy way to kind of find some general information. So you want to grab time on my calendar, chat more one-on-one, go to strategymeeting.com. If you want to just find out a little bit more about our firm, go to lawwithmiller.com.
Great, thanks. And thanks to our listeners. All of that will be in the show notes, so check those out.
You can connect with us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can reach us on our websites at sbpace.com or bizquickpodcast.com.
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, like us, and give us a review. We love feedback.
We really do love feedback. We appreciate it. You can reach out to us about topics you'd like to hear more about. Just fill out the Contact Us form, and we're happy to fulfill your greatest wishes. Oh, hey, we wrote a book. It's a #1 bestseller on Amazon, and it comes with a digital companion workbook.
That's it for today's podcast. I'm Corey.
I'm Julie, and I'm going to say the name of our book really quick.
Oh, yeah, you should do that.
It's called Seriously, Now What? A Small Business Guide to Disaster Preparedness.
Okay, so I'm Corey.
And I'm Julie.
And this was BizQuik, helping small businesses across America.